There is a supernatural world that surrounds us, and sometimes it manifests to people like you and me. You'll hear stories about this and so much more right here on Supernatural Confrontations. I was recently on Robin's show, and now we're turning the tables. He had a supernatural confrontation when he was about 8 years old with could only be described as a hybrid. He's pondered this long and hard and wonders what he's looking at. A medical anomaly? I don't know. I wasn't there. And Robin was only 8. But there's other interesting stories or interesting facets to his story, and we'll get into that. But first, a word from our trusted sponsor, Noble Gold. Things are getting tough out there. Inflation is at 8.2%, and it's just getting worse. And we're not all that great with money, are we? At times like these, you need a trusted partner to look after you and make sure you'll be okay. Noble Gold is the team you want on your side. Keep your money safe and grab an incredible free 3-ounce silver American Virtue coin when you open your qualifying IRA account with them this month for over 20 grand. Folks, money is broken. Everything's getting more expensive. The government seems to be losing control, and the Fed just makes things worse by raising the interest rate. Trying to get decent returns on your savings is driving you nuts. Sound familiar? Noble Gold gets it. Completely focused on honesty and education. Their crack team of precious metal experts have helped thousands of worried investors like you to build and preserve wealth through times like these. Folks, my wife and I have invested with Noble Gold. So, they're our go-to precious metal people. By giving you direct contact with a single dedicated professional, you get exclusive free access to that help with no hassle or call centers to deal with. Find out why precious metals and IRAs are the answer to inflation and financial worry. Give the team at Noble Gold a call and join the others who have taken advantage of their offer. They'll guide you through the process and make it easy for you. Folks, this month, they're gifting a stunning free 3-ounce silver American Virtue coin with every qualified IRA above 20 grand. You can't go wrong with Noble Gold. Call 877-646-5347. That's 877-646-5347, or go to noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. So, Robin's an 8-year-old boy. He goes in, he has this encounter, and he basically blurts out to his dad, "Oh my gosh, an alien." So what are we to make of that? Is that just some sort of a medical anomaly with this woman, or is it something else? Is it, in fact, hybrids walking amongst us? But what is interesting about Robin's testimony is the whole UFO dynamic to it, the crop circles. So stuff is going on. And what's important about this is we need to come to grips with the fact that this phenomenon is not going away. Here's the interview. First of all, Robin, thanks so much for coming on Supernatural Confrontations. I've been on your show a couple of times now, and so things have switched around here, and I'll be interviewing you rather than vice versa. But you've had some chilling experiences, supernatural confrontations. Tell us about them, please.
Yeah, well, the one we're here to share today is regarding something that happened to me when I was about 8 years old. And I know, like, if I would mention this, people will be like, "Oh, were you abducted by an alien?" No, 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 no. There was no probing. Nothing happened. But back in 1993, and this was a pretty traumatic year for me as a child, and just everything that happened. Our house burnt down that year. We had the blizzard of 93. And I got paralyzed for a brief period of time, and like, this is just a very traumatic year. So I remember the events pretty clearly because of that, right? But back in probably around July of 1993, I remember being out on the front porch with my mom and dad at night, And my mom's looking up at the sky, and she's pointing at this light, and she goes, "What is that?" There's this bright, shining light just above the treetops, maybe a couple 100 feet. It's just like a white, clear light. To me, I'm colorblind, but that's what it looked like to me, like a HD headlight. Um, and she was seeing that for about 2 weeks. And she kept pointing it out every night. She would see it, and it was there. And it's like very unusual because usually you don't see it that often. I would
What,
I
what
would
part of
think.
the country is this in?
Oh, this is Mohawk, New York. We were up on the top of it's called Vickerman Hill on Route 28. And so where this was happening was just up the road a little bit. I want to say to the north, but my directions could be off. It was just up the road a little bit on a in a field where she was seeing the light called Columbia Center or Columbia Circle, one of the two. They're pretty much very close to each other. Um, and this is actually a documented thing. This is you can look up crop circle Vickerman Hill, Mohawk, New York, 1993, and you'll see the crop circle come up and the ICCRA and everything. Did a report on it and the police reports and everything. And so after about 2 weeks of seeing this, we went to sleep. There was an unusual thunderstorm, kind of came out of nowhere, standard stuff, which I didn't know back then. But this thunderstorm comes out of nowhere, and we wake up in the morning and we're watching News Channel 2, so where my grandpa worked for a long time. And they're talking about this crop circle that happened right up the road from us. And it's these three circles, different sizes. Almost looks like you're taking a map and putting pieces on a map, like here's a circle, here's a circle, and here's a circle. And we were watching, and this is also reported by the police who were investigating. I mean, the FBI was up there also, but they didn't say that in the report. This truck driver said he was driving down the road and he saw an unusual light floating around in the sky. And then the thunderstorm happened, and he looked in the field as he was driving by and saw the light flying around in the field as he was driving by. And then they had the report of the crop circles the next day. So shortly after that, our house catches on fire, maybe a couple weeks later, and we have to move out of that house, and we move into a little blue mobile home in the trailer park behind the house that we were living in, which was pretty horrible because we were in this big, huge house. Now we're in this tiny little mobile home.
Yeah, that's hard.
And
Uh, been there,
um,
done that.
yeah, it's rough, you know. It's happened to me again in my life, you know. But we I'm standing out on the back porch of this little house, and we have a decent sized deck on this house. I'm standing on the back porch in between the kitchen and the back porch. It'll be kitchen here, back porch right here. And all of a sudden, the lights dim in the house, and they go kind of like a crescendo. And it happened like one time, went way down low, and then came back up most of the way, and then went way down low again, and then went back up. I was like, what was that? And I just happened to look up at the sky because it went from being these crystal clear blue skies to like, I don't know how I missed it, but all of a sudden clouds kind of rolled in. And it was gray over our house, like a big cloud, but not a whole lot of clouds, not everywhere, just in this area. And I look up and I see this black cigar shaped
Hmm.
thing that I thought I didn't know what it was. It was quiet. It was moving very quickly. Like when you look at a sky and you see an airplane, you know the airplane's moving, even if it's a fighter jet, you can tell it's moving fast. This is moving faster than those. It was like from here to here, like that. And then all of a sudden, it hits these clouds, gone.
Yeah,
Don't see it anymore.
yeah.
Then I hear helicopters in the distance, very low and very close, actually close enough that they were shaking the treetops. They were low enough to the ground. Um, and it was two Black Hawk unmarked helicopters that came flying out, chasing after it, but it was gone before they were even there. So I don't know what the point was of chasing after this or trying to catch this thing. Um, so there's that little bit. Then shortly after that, we had my dad and I went down to the local McDonald's in Herkimer, New York, which is just the next town over. I live in Mohawk. Herkimer's the town adjacent to um, Mohawk.
Mhm.
And I'm at this McDonald's, and I see this lady. I've never seen her before, and I've never seen her again. And I grew up in that area, Herkimer, Mohawk, Ilion area, basically until I was about 25. then I moved to Syracuse in my 30s, but I grew up in that area. So I pretty much, you live in a small town like that, you see everybody, you know almost everybody. It is just the way it is. My dad grew up there, my family's grew up there. So when you just know everybody. And this I saw this lady. It was the strangest looking lady that I've ever seen. And 8 years old, I had no discretion and I didn't care. I nudged my dad and I go, Dad, look, an alien. But I said it loud. I wasn't trying to be discreet. I was like, Dad, an alien. I was a little bit scared. No, like you watch the movies and you think aliens bad, abductions, hurting people, eating people, it's slavery, stuff like that. Like what the media tells you, which is also what the Bible tells you. Actually, ironically, that's the one time they kind of line up. Uh, and my dad goes, "Oh, she's just having an allergic reaction or something like that." Well, here's what didn't make sense to me about that from when I was 8 to now, 30 years later. Her eyes were huge, like this in her head. Huge. No pupil, just, no iris, no color, just a big black eye with white around the outside on both of her eyes. They had to be 3 times bigger than my eyeball at least, and the lens came out like kind of like that, like almost like a fish eye almost. And uh both her eyes were like that. Her head was very large. So I'm like, if it was an allergic reaction, why would her cranium be swelling? Like it's one thing your skin swells, but your bones don't swell. You know, she was pretty short, kind of a small nose. I remember very clearly, like if you could read my mind, I could literally just show you the picture. She was wearing a red parka in the middle of the summer, which was very weird to me. And her feet didn't touch the floor. She looked at me with this look of disdain, and I was terrified because I didn't know what to think. And then she looked back at somebody she was sitting with. It was a guy with brown hair, kind of short hair. And it looked like she said something to him, but she didn't move her lips. And I wish I was making this up. I wish that because it sounds so crazy. And she didn't move her lips, and the guy laughs and says something back to her in response to something that she never said. And then she just stared at him. Well, I turned around and looked at my dad because my dad's like, "Stop staring at her." And I'm like, "How do you look away from this?" Like I'm 8, I don't know. And so that was the most unusual thing. And then the last thing is I was interviewing somebody about this because this is what I'm interested in now. This is like, I see what's going on. I know what's happening in the world today. So somebody I know who wishes to remain anonymous, but I could tell you off camera, um, in case you needed to know the source, said that they were asleep when these lights hit, and the night of the crop circles, and said that 2 of these creatures came into her room, and they were not very tall. She said probably about 4.5, maybe 5 feet tall, grayish skin. She said, well, I don't really know exactly what color they were because it was nighttime, but they looked grayish. They had very large black eyes and 6 fingers. And they said to her, without moving their mouth, they said to her, we're not going to hurt you. And then just stayed there in the room for a while, she said, and just looked around at everything, but didn't move, and then just disappeared after about 5 minutes. I asked her if she had like a sleep paralysis or anything like that, trying to get out the details. She said, no. I mean, things were a little bit foggy, a little bit fuzzy, but that could just be because it's been 30 years. But I just thought that was very interesting that she noticed they had 6 fingers and the size of their eyes, because she's a Christian now. She was not a Christian at that point. She wouldn't think to herself that, hey, these are probably the hybrids or something like that. So that's the extent of what I know and what I have to share. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Let me ask you something. There is a disease called hydrocephaly, where the swelling of the head happens. It's like water on the brain type thing, and the head can really swell up, and of course the eyes would bulge out. There's a possibility that that woman that you encountered at that McDonald's so many years ago had that disease. I mean, I can show if you Google that, you might see what you saw. I'm not saying it was, don't know, but there's always sometimes there's a natural explanation to the unnatural things. As far as the lights over the crop circles, we've heard this before. That's what they do. People will drive by and they'll see lights in the field that shouldn't be there, and then the next morning, boom, there's a crop circle. And some of these things can be really intricate. What was the one in your neck of the woods? Was it just a circle or what?
It was a series of three circles, and I have looked up hydrocephalus, and her head didn't look like that. It looked like it it looked like a large, like she had a elongated kind of large skull, but she had black hair. But it was like the Neanderthal type elongated, not the longest. It wasn't swollen looking, and her eyes were not like puffed out, but they were very large. I don't like very large,
This came from
open.
Caracas, and
Yeah,
we can see that. And those eyes are at least 25 to 30% larger than a normal human being. That's just the way it is. And we've, in our film on DNA, we've had an optometrist examine the skulls, and he comes on the record and basically says that, whatever this thing is, it's some sort of genetic aberration. So, and it cuts back into Dr. David Jacobs' book, Walking Amongst Us. Have you ever heard of Ellen Crystal?
I have not.
She's a researcher that was upstate New York. There was a major UFO flap up in the upstate New York in the 90s, and she wrote several books on it. And then she was, in my opinion, taken out. But that's another story. So it's very interesting. Um, Definitely experienced some high strangeness there, Robin. Definitely some high strangeness.
One thing that I noticed, I was talking to, I don't know if I can use his name here or not, but I was talking to somebody who's studies and researches crop circles and stuff last night. He actually called me late last night, and we were talking probably for like an hour about these crop circles. And one of the things that he pointed out to me was that he saw a string of crop circles that popped up in around 2010 in Ohio, which is where he's from, in different places. And he looked, and the crop circles made arrows and geometric arrows in different shapes. And he looked at, there was a series that had popped up, and he looked, and they were all in a straight line on the map. Which I looked at the crop circles from 1990 to 2010 in the state of New York, and they don't go an exact straight line, but they follow a trail. It almost looks like they follow like a Native American trail. And I noticed that several were around Indian burial mounds or old
Yep.
sites where there were Native American villages or something like that. And I had already contemplated that in my head before he said that. And what he was saying to me was he took and said, well, what if these triangles are pointing at something? And he drew out a line from the crop circles pointing off in each direction of these crop circles. And what he discovered was that every single one of them went directly through the middle of one of the burial mounds that was in that area. And even including, I think it was the triangle one that he said went right through the snake mound. And I was like, well, that's very interesting. So that got me thinking, because I'd already speculated this in my own head. What if these are indicators that are pointing to different geographic areas on a map? So there were three circles. I don't know about the other two circles, but I took one that I felt was pointing in the direction of my house where I grew up. Now, there is a field behind my house, and then there's a forest on the other side. I'm not exactly sure who owns the forest behind this side. I think it was my landlord, but I'm not 100% certain. One day, my brother goes into the woods, and he finds this big mound. And we had found a lot of weird things out there that shouldn't be out there. My brother is one of my brothers is autistic. He's a highly functioning autistic. But one of his things is he likes to go out and, when he was a kid, and smash rocks and see what was inside of the rocks. He found trilobite fossils, all kinds of fossilized coral reef. He found a stone with nuts and bolts in it. It wasn't one of those ones where it's I forget the name of it, starts with a C or something like that, where it's like a piece of coral inside of the rock. It was like a literal screw with a literal washer and nut next in it in the rock. And he's looking for that. He has it in the house somewhere. We found that. Well, one day my other brother was out in the woods wandering around, and he came to this large mound, and he said that he said a ghost came, a black ghost, he called it, which we know is a demon, and told him that this was a burial mound and he needs to get off this, out of this land. So I thought I wasn't a Christian. I was like, you're dumb, like just making stuff up, right? Well, I looked at this crop circle from 93 and I extended out a line from the crop circle pointing in the direction of where I lived all the way through. And sure enough, that line goes right through that mound, which we can see actually on a satellite on Google Earth. I've looked at it several times. It goes right through the middle of that mound. And we found arrowheads, tomahawk heads, all
Wow.
axe heads, all kinds of things that shouldn't be there because, as far as they know, there was no indigenous people living in that area, from what they know.
Interesting. When you're off air, let's talk about the gentleman who's researching crop circles because that's after film 4, which is coming out in a couple of weeks, God willing. That's I've already got a lot of interviews. Actually, we're in England at Wiltshire at this crop circle museum with Hugh Newman and Francisco Cordera. So that's already. But I'd like us to. Where's this guy based at? Do you know?
I believe he said he was in Michigan. I think he said he lives in Ohio right now, somewhere in Ohio.
You can just text his name or contact information. I would love to talk to him. But I'm going to give you the last word. What amazes me about all this, there's a whole series. It's mysterious. You've got crop circles that are pointing towards allegedly Native American, which I don't believe are Native American, but they're burial grounds, they're edifices, they're mounds. The Serpent Mound, you mentioned that. You've got crop circles. You've got Black Hawk helicopters chasing these things. The house catches on fire, the lights go dim. All these are classic signs of supernatural activity. And I mean, this is what's amazing to me that there's in our world, specifically in Christendom, I mean, we don't talk about this stuff. Nobody talks about it. We do here, and I know on your show you do too, because people are looking, they want answers. What's going on? Especially someone like yourself that's had an encounter, a confrontation like this, you're looking for answers. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, it's true. That's what made me bring it up. I've held on to this for 30 years, not because I was worried that anybody was going to think I was crazy or anything, but this is something that I feel like it's important for the people in the church to start coming forward and recognizing that this is an issue that we are in. This is part of the coming great deception. And I'm not a flat earther. I don't believe in all of that. But there's too many scriptures out there that say, like Isaiah 13, verse 5, it says, the weapons of God's indignation come from the farthest reaches of the heavens, which is what the word that they use for space, Hashamayim, from space, the farthest reaches of space. So I feel like this is something that, like, it's an uncomfortable topic. People don't want to talk about this. You sound like a weirdo. It gives you negative publicity. And you start to get pooed on by people because of whatever. But I just want to encourage people that this is real. This is something that we need to address as the body of Christ. This is something that the church needs to talk about, no matter how uncomfortable it makes you or how crazy you think it is. This is not a game, because when they show up, and the church has never said anything about aliens and how that pertains to the Bible, those hybrid beings, the demons, the aliens, whatever, and they show up quoting scripture to you that you never read, that you have no idea about because you weren't reading your Bible and the church wasn't talking about it, then you are prey to fall victim to the stories they tell you. And so I wanted to share this, not to get my name out there or get publicity or anything, which you wouldn't know because I wore my Fireside Gray shirt and forgot to change my name. Should have put Mr. X there. But this is something that's very real, very important, and we're not very far down the road from this imminent exposure that LA has been teaching, and he's years ahead of the game. You need to pay attention, research this, and not just say, oh, well, the Bible doesn't say this and you're crazy. It's a crackpot theory. You're a conspiracy theorist. You need to take this real, because the agenda that's being pushed on you by the mainstream media that you see almost every day now, that was just conspiracy theory 10, 15, 20 years, even 5 years ago, is real. And every day there's a new news report about UFOs and aliens. Why? They're trying to desensitize you, confuse you, confound you, and trick you into losing your salvation and believing these people and inevitably receiving the mark of the beast.
That's where it's headed. Well said, Robin. Thanks so much for coming on the record. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So there you have it. You be the judge. You try to connect the dots, and what did Robin really see? I don't know, but I believe his testimony. I think it is fascinating. Crop circles, UFOs, it's all connected. It's all connected. This is, in my opinion, the coming great deception. When it manifests, it will change everything on this planet and do so instantaneously. You haven't seen UFO Disclosure 1 through 3? They are now available. You can go to streaming.lamarzulli.net. That's streaming.lamarzulli.net, and you can binge watch all 3 of them. We were here last night. Gil Zimmerman and I were here, and we had a Zoom chat with all 4 people who make up the bulwark of episode 4. All these people were taken. They were abducted numerous times. And that interview, that Zoom chat was unbelievable. So Gil's coming up Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We'll probably have the film wrapped up by the weekend. Off it goes. And this film is riveting. You can also go to our website, lamarzulli.net, and partake of the festivities there. If you have a supernatural confrontation, shoot me an email, la@lamarzulli.net. That's la@lamarzulli.net. John Adam Hicks is our producer. He will get to you. All we need is 1 email. Please don't send 4 or 5. It's very frustrating, and it just clogs up the email basket. So once again, that's supernatural@lamarzulli.net. Our producer, John Adam Hicks, will be getting back to you, and we'll line up an interview. Thanks so much for watching Supernatural Confrontations. Remember, the supernatural is real, and sometimes it manifests to people like you and me. Thanks for watching.
They got their knowledge from the heavens.
He saw it, said, whoa, that's a UFO.
This orb comes up and it's bright orange.
I'm not wanting to make full eye contact with these things. But from what I did see when I did look at them, they're like they're soulless.
It was right directly above us right here, and then it started tilting and moving up like that.
All of a sudden I was being lifted about 3 feet off the ground.
It was going slow. I was walking right underneath it.